Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. You're with me now, Dr. Muhammad Husni bin Muhammad Amin, Fellow at IKIM Center for Science and Environment Studies on Radio IKIM English Section Program, Great Works of the Muslim World, airing every Sunday at 5 p.m. In the first season, we talked about this book by Ibn Rushd on his commentary on Plato's Republic. And if we can recall who he was a Muslim Andalusian polymath and jurist who wrote about many subjects: philosophy, theology, medicine, astronomy, physics, psychology, mathematics, Islamic jurisprudence and law, and also linguistics. So this week we'll delve into another of his work, which is after the great scholar Imam Al-Ghazali's scathing attack on philosophy in the Tahafut Falasifah. Later, Ibn Rushd will answer him, a reply to his every claim in his own work, Tahafut at-Tahafut, and he would follow up that work with another work called Fasl Al-Maqal. And with us today is Syed Muhyiddin Al-Atas, who graduated politics and philosophy and economics degree from University of Otago in New Zealand, and he has a master of philosophy on the study of Syed Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas's conception of the West. And currently, he is now studying in Darul Mustafa and in Educational Institute for the Study of Traditional Islamic Sciences based in Tarim in Yemen. And his learning is goes into the Traditional School of Islamic Sciences. And welcome to Great Works of the Muslim World.
Thank you, Dr. Husni.
Yes. So Ustaz Said, what drove Ibn Rushd to write Fasl Al-Maqal, also translated as the Decisive Treatise, and what can you tell us about the major contentions of this book?
Yes, thank you. As you have mentioned, Ibn Rushd has a very colorful or brilliant scholarly life, as you see, and perhaps you may have mentioned in your previous episode in Ibn Rushd that he come from a long line of Qadi. Yeah. He was a Qadi who's son of a Qadi and a grandson of another Qadi. So, and he lived a very vibrant knowledge culture. And as we know, he has written commentaries on most of Aristotle's works. And as you have done it with the Republic, that shows the exception, because perhaps Aristotle's politics was not available to many of the Muslim philosophers. So he substituted it for the teacher's writing, the Republic. But he considers it within one bigger structure. Nevertheless, as we know, the dramatic setting of the Decisive Treatise, i.e. the Decisive Treatise to determine the relationship between religion and philosophy, or more precisely between Sharia and Al-Hikmah. He wrote it in a circumstance whereby philosophy is going through turbulent times, where, let us say, mainstream, or in present day parlance, Orthodox Muslims were looking at it suspiciously. So he wanted, therefore, to determine the proper relationship. And it is written, the Decisive Treatise, as if it was a fatwa, a religious edict. And so we see that in it, as Ibn Rushd, an experienced Qadi who has also written a jurist's primer called the Bidayatul Mujtahid, yes, in which he explores the different principles and sources of law in the different legal schools in Islam. He begins by determining what philosophy is, or rather by cleverly defining what philosophy is. He said that if by philosophy is understood contemplation of existing things, leading to knowledge of the Lord, or knowledge of the artisan, or contemplating artifacts of creation leading to the knowledge of the artisan, i.e. the creator. And we find in the Quran that God commands human beings to reflect upon his creation. Therefore, it is a religious obligation to study philosophy. If if God commands, or if there is a divine command to study nature, or rather the realm of creation, to arrive at knowledge of the creator, and philosophy is just that. Therefore, it follows that philosophy is an obligation. But of course, he clarifies this by a number of clarifications. First and foremost, uh, the fact that what would constitute reflection. Yes, and throughout the work he distinguishes between the different kinds or different levels of intellect, or different natures of mankind as God has created them. Let us say that the frame of the Decisive Treatise already addresses the Muslims and the believers, not just adherents to any particular belief, or just any person, but he's now addressing people who already accept the Sharia to be true. So that is why he uses arguments from the Quran, and arguments which is acceptable within the realm of dialectic. Let us say one example that he gives. Supposing we consider that the study of philosophy is already established. He said that, well, some may object into saying that, but this was not done during the lifetime of the Prophet, i.e. the employment of logic or syllogistic reasoning, al-qiyas, in the realm of nature to arrive at the existence of God or the characteristics of God. He then says in reply, well, neither is fiqh, i.e. exploring jurisprudence. It was not something that was explored by the companions during the lifetime of the Prophet, but yet it has roots, let us say, in the sources, i.e. the Quran. So therefore it remains justified. Further, he anticipates objections, because we know that his time being nearly 100 years after Imam al-Ghazali would meant that the works of Imam al-Ghazali, the scathing attacks of Imam al-Ghazali against Greek source philosophy, particularly of the line of Ibn Sina and al-Farabi, he first then understood that one of the things that came to be widespread is that it is commonly believed that Imam al-Ghazali charged the teachings, at least some of the teachings of the previously mentioned philosophers, with heresy, particularly on several of these matters, i.e. that the God's knowledge of particulars, the resurrection of bodies, and the issue of the eternity
of the universe.
Yes, the pre-eternity of the universe. Now, so Ibn Rushd then would set out trying to explain that in truth these are let us say not matters which are apparent in the Sharia. It is something which is rather hidden, and he's saying that if you apply proper syllogistic reasoning, you will find that some of the conclusions, of course we may accept his arguments or not, some of the conclusions of the philosophers were led by proper methodology, and so therefore if they err, he wants to say that they are akin to the error of the qualified jurist, in that the ijtihad of the jurist, i.e. a person qualified to do so, if he is correct, then he gets twice the reward, and if he errs, then he gets one the reward. Of course, we can say in jest, the error of the jurist does not lead to disbelief.
Yes.
Yes, in this case it does lead to disbelief if as it turns out it goes against what is held in consensus about what the Quran is saying.
Interesting that you should say that, because some hold that what Ibn Rushd did was purely out of academic interest, that when he refuted, when he did tahafut, when he tried to refute the refutations of Imam Al-Ghazali, that he did it because in some of the claim he said that Imam Ghazali based his criticism on the misunderstandings of the philosophers among the Muslims, namely Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina, and not what the Greek philosophers themselves believed. So he went against, well, his criticism towards Ghazali is actually directed towards those misunderstandings, that the foundations of this refutation were built on shaky grounds, and that but uh, in some respect he does agree with Al-Ghazali, and in other respect he disagrees with him. But I think one would be curious to know that how, as this paints a different picture than it is painted, what is painted in the West, that he is through and through an Aristotelian, that he's a firm believer in Aristotelianism. But rather, the curious thing that one should ask is that how is he? Well, we see that he's long pedigree and education in the religious sciences. He was trained as a qadi, and he served even as a qadi. How a person that uh, held to Aristotelian beliefs, I think somewhere there he rejects the atomism of the Ash'arites. He has some criticism level towards them, of Al-Ghazali and also Fakhruddin Razi. One wonders that how should a Muslim who who professes Aristotelianism could continue on being a religious scholar and a qadi at that. Maybe you want to deliberate on that.
Who knows what personally his faith was.
Yeah.
But what we do know is that from the Decisive Treatise, the Fasl Al-Maqal, that Ibn Rushd seems to consider that mankind have different natures, as we said. That the great multitude of mankind is addressed through the method of khitaba or rhetorics, i.e., the Quran as a revelation. And let us say that based on the Fasl Al-Maqal, the Quran and the Sharia is not something that Ibn Rushd outright rejects. Rather, he accepts it to be true.
Different than Ibn Sina or Al-Farabi, who they were not religious scholars, they were purely philosophers.
Well, I cannot say that within these limitations, that I know that very well about Ibn Sina and Al-Farabi's backgrounds. But with regards to Ibn Rushd, we see that already he's taken the Quran to be true. Now, what is at issue is merely what the contention is the interpretation of the Quran. So, and as he said, that the Quran wishes to establish three things beyond doubt, i.e., as a matter of i'tiqad, as a matter of belief. That first, you have to believe in the unity of God, and that secondly, the reality of the afterlife, meaning to say that which leads to ultimate felicity or happiness, and its opposite. And then thirdly, you have to believe in the veracity of prophecy. And he, of course, he cites Imam Al-Ghazali's Tafriqah also to prove this. But as for the interpretation pertaining to the details of the content, so he said that there are then these three methods. So either you apply logic or syllogism, i.e. Qiyas, which he considers to be demonstrative proof. Yes, which requires a person to go through an argument to its conclusion in a manner that it is ironclad knowledge. And to this, I suppose, a very small number of the population is capable of. So for this, according to Ibn Rushd, a person who possesses the innate intellectual capacity and the moral integrity for them, yes, the study of philosophy is incumbent, that it is obligatory for them, because they are now capable of pursuing these logical lines, and then to establish their beliefs upon this firm structure.
Yeah.
Another category of people, which is let us say also talented, but perhaps not arriving at the degree of demonstrable proof, are those who proceed via dialectics, i.e., the pursuit of something akin to the Socratic method,
Yeah.
in that a person brings about a particular thesis statement, and another person refutes that statement by showing the internal contradictions to it. Yes, which is reminiscent of the method of the mutakallimun. And then there is the general public. So the Quran employs all three kinds of methods in order to establish belief and faith. And let us say that the Sharia consists of both elements of right belief or cognition pertaining to God, and articles of belief, and then the other pertaining to the science of happiness, i.e., practical virtue. And this too has two aspects and components. There is the external aspect of behavior and action, which is under the purview of fiqh, and the internal component, which Imam Al-Ghazali aptly titles Ulum Al-Akhirah, the science of the hereafter. So if we understand it to be this way, Ibn Rushd adds the provision that we should not limit reflection upon al-kawn, upon the creation, leading to knowledge of God, or certain knowledge, or demonstrable knowledge of God, to just Muslims, but it should also include the ancients, i.e., he must have in mind the philosophers of past, who have already labored along this path. As we know, with his elaborate commentaries of the various lengths, that he has studied the works of Aristotle, from the physics to the logical treatises up to the metaphysics, and on the anima, the soul, so all aspects. And he thinks that this is a systematic exposition of all kinds of knowledge.
Yeah.
And he does not perhaps consider that even the metaphysics might be suspect.
Mm-hmm.
So his main contention, therefore, is that only Aristotle, the Stagirite, only he fulfills the requirement of demonstrative proof with regards to the metaphysics. And he therefore said, and this perhaps became the origin of the understanding in Europe later of the double truth theory, in that if the results of demonstrative reasoning contradicts with that which is apparent in the revelation, then that which is apparent in the revelation ought to be given an allegorical interpretation, so as to fit the requirements of demonstrative reasoning. But what do we say to all of this? Well, we can say that with insight and hindsight now, especially with the writings of the present day metaphysicians such as Professor Naqib Al-Atas, upon his brilliant study of Western civilization, that there are elements of metaphysical assumptions within the Aristotelian belief and the Greek tradition, which does not stand which is not something that can be proven demonstrably as a pre-philosophical assumption. It is merely the fact that it has been worked out in an elaborate system, as if it was sound. And this is something that Imam Al-Ghazali had proven in the Tahafut Al-Falasifa. And if in that Imam Al-Ghazali said that, on the contrary, against Ibn Rushd's assumption that Al-Ghazali was employing dialectic to discourse on something requiring demonstrative logic, Al-Ghazali did not destroy the thesis of the philosophers by demonstrable proof. He can merely show, that they do not constitute, demonstrative proof in their thesis pertaining to metaphysics. In other words, Al-Ghazali is now showing that metaphysics is not something to be settled in the realm of speculative science. But Al-Ghazali has another way to prove the truths of the truths of religion, let us say, and that is found in his Munkith, whereby he said that it is ultimately through through, for lack of a better word, mystical or religious experience,
Yeah.
that you come to know the spiritual truths.
Yeah. I think this is fast turning into uh, something on tahafut instead of
Yeah.
Fasl Al-Maqal. But I believe that you've touched something. Back then you said that it is through this that the double truth theory, later on when the West studied Ibn Rushd. I mean, the scholars of the Catholic Church, and when they study him, they brought him to Europe and they studied him. So this is, yeah, because in this book, I think Ibn Rushd says that both religion and philosophy seeks the truth.
Yes.
So this is very much something that the West really liked when they read this. Something that almost sympathizes with their position as the inheritors of Greek philosophy. But what do you think? What do you think about these impacts that Ibn Rushd had done? And I mean, first in the West, and also did he produce any impact at all in the Muslim world?
Well, some of the experts on Ibn Rushd were
Yeah.
able to locate, I mean, with regards to the Muslim world,
Mhm.
perhaps some scholars,
Mhm.
these are mainly still in manuscript form or still preliminary studies, that there were some scholars in the East that has either made use of some of the arguments of Ibn Rushd, or perhaps that they have that have tried to expand on some of his theses. But this is generally not the case, in that in the Eastern lands, we can say that the great Avicennan tradition, where philosophy is concerned, prospered. Even as some of the theses, yes, like emanationism,
Yeah.
and several other theses of Ibn Sina were then refuted
Yeah.
by generations of scholars, including up to Mullah Sadra in Persia.
Yeah.
You find that in general aspects of his ontology became incorporated and so on. But not so with Ibn Rushd. We can hardly find some of the later major thinkers even mentioning Ibn Rushd.
Yeah.
But the same cannot be said of his influence in the West. We know that Ibn Rushd's status in the West was so high that he was considered just the commentator.
Yeah.
Meaning to say, when if the philosopher was to refer to Aristotle, who Dante said was the master of all those who know, yes, then the prime commentator of Aristotle was Averroes in their writings. And this is because his especially the long commentaries on the metaphysics and on the soul and so on, um, leads leads the universities in the West to continue to study Ibn Rushd up till, let us say, 1650, according to the accounts of the historians. But it created the writings of Ibn Rushd also created a controversy, in that there came to be this madhab, yes, let us say the school of Averroes, called the Latin Averroists.
Yeah.
who were-
Averroism.
Averroism, yes, who were even more extreme than Averroes, if we consider Ibn Rushd to be an extremist in the first place, but in thought. But nevertheless, even if amongst the Latin scholars, in the likes of Thomas Aquinas, who disagreed with the Latin Averroes with regards to the double truth theory, because he wanted to defend the harmony between revelation and reason thesis.
Yeah.
Even then, in his understanding of Aristotle, he was deeply indebted. And we know the story of how Ibn Rushd was even incorporated, not only in the paintings, yes, but he was also incorporated in the literary imagination, the likes of Dante's comedy, Divine Comedy.
Yeah.
But more so, I think why the allure of Averroism continued is how they have misread. I mean, because if we say in the beginning just now, but the double truth theory, this was not something that Ibn Rushd really defended. This was something that the Latin Averroes considered.
Yeah.
Yes, because in the mind of Ibn Rushd, he did not consider that what could be independently discovered by the mind via demonstrative reasoning to be something that could contradict the apparent verses.
Yeah.
But clearly, if you apply the same standard to other scriptures as they did in the Latin West, this the parallelism or between the double truth would be something more apparent. But I think when it comes to perpetuating the authority of an Aristotle, Ibn Rushd may have been the scholar, let us say, I mean to consider that philosophy became complete with Aristotle. But this was clearly shown to be otherwise in physics when with the Copernican revolution, and with regards to Western philosophy in metaphysics with Immanuel Kant. Yes, but unfortunately, the trajectory that the West took after the fall of Aristotle, reinforced by the commentaries of Averroes, is that they went the secular route.
Yeah.
But whereas in the Islamic Islamic theology and philosophy, we took the Ghazalian route.
Yeah.
In that they continued to prosper even up to in the Malay world
Yeah.
and beyond, within a structure that still incorporates elements of Greek science that were beneficial, the likes of logic, incorporated within Islamic sciences, mathematics, and so on. But yet, the Islamic character remained. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, what is Fasl Al-Maqal about again? I'm just kidding. So, I think in the conclusion, what is the status of studying philosophy in modern time?
Yes.
Looking, based on what have
Yes.
Rushd done.
The thing about studying philosophy in contemporary times is that we have to be aware that philosophy is one word that has many meanings within it, and some of it contradicting each other. Philosophy in most of the modern departments today sincerely cannot be what Ibn Rushd thinks it states it to be. In philosophy today is no longer contemplation of the artifacts with intending knowledge of God. Most of the philosophy departments in the Anglo speaking world considers their work to be focusing more on logic, on philosophy of science, and studies of ethics, and it has all, and in most cases, with few exceptions, consider philosophy to be a secular activity. Of course, they have they do no longer consider the study of the data of revelation of any consequence. So therefore, we certainly cannot say that it is an obligation now. But if by philosophy, on the other hand, is meant logic, then I would say that again the same judgment of an Ibn Rushd can still hold true, i.e., the fact that we can incorporate, let us say, the study of logical treatises as part of a propedeutic or preparatory science for students of knowledge, and then they should progressively, depending on their potentiality, and as Ibn Rushd said, there's two provision: if they have the intellectual capacity and if they have the moral integrity to do so, and they should then seek out right teachers. Yes, because the right teachers can then point them to the true tradition of philosophy, because philosophy requires a tradition. They can understand what the true problems of philosophy are, and they can then study and understand the proper role of philosophy to religion. Let us say, the Latin philosophers considered philosophy to be the handmaiden of religion. Yes, the handmaiden of religion. We say that rather within the Islamic intellectual tradition, aspects of philosophy, once Islamized, can serve us better to understand even the requirements of religion.
All right. Thank you, Syed, for being on board Great Works of the Muslim World today.
Thank you.
So, all right. So we thank you all. You had been listening to Said Muhyiddin Al-Attas on a Radio Ikim English section program, Great Works of the Muslim World. We're airing every Sunday, 5 p.m. And this program is produced by Hajjah Maslina Alias. Until next time, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.